How did Nazi Germany blitz through Europe with such terrifying speed and relentless energy? Was it superior tactics, ruthless determination, or was there something else coursing through the veins of its soldiers, giving them an almost inhuman edge? In World War II, an invisible force powered the German war machine, an unstoppable drive fueled not just by ideology, but by a tiny white pill. A pill that could keep a soldier awake for days, numb his fear, and make him feel invincible. This is the chilling story of how methamphetamines marketed as harmless pep pills became the secret weapon behind the Blitzkrieg, and how in a dark twist of irony, the very drugs that propelled Nazi conquest also pushed its soldiers to the brink of madness. When were amphetamines first used by the military? Why was it provided? Did the drug have any pronounced effect on the war? What were the benefits and detriments? Did every country use them? Today, once again, welcome back, viewers, to Forgotten Mystery Videos. Dear viewers, pain-relieving drugs first marketed in Germany in 1917 as an over-the-counter pain reliever became popular, and one was an opioid under the brand name of Uadal, which is today labeled as oxycodone, and often sold under the brand names oxycodone and OxyContin. It is a semi-synthetic opioid used medically for the treatment of moderate to severe pain and is highly addictive. But another drug was becoming even more popular, and it was marketed as Pervitin, which was consumed throughout the war, although only available by prescription. But Hitler himself became addicted to Uadal and many other drugs as the years went by, which damaged his health. The German military began experimenting with Pervitin, which is a methamphetamine that produces higher energy while reducing the need for sleep and hunger, which the military saw as a great advantage in combat. They were also impressed with the psychological impact displayed by the soldiers, as it indeed was said to spark a great enthusiasm as well as a feeling of confidence and omnipotence. Interestingly enough, crystalline methamphetamine, or crystal meth, was first produced in Japan, and having access to that formula allowed Pervitin to be developed by Fritz Hauschild, which was patented in Germany in 1937 by the Temmler Group. It was considered as an energy booster like caffeine, but more effective, and the drug was perfectly legal over the counter until 1941. Pervitin was advertised throughout Germany and Austria, with ads placed in magazines and on billboards until it became a controlled substance later. Temmler believed that it was an opportunity to compete with Coca-Cola, which advertised that drink's energy benefits. The Temmler company hired the advertising firm Mathis & Son, an advertising agency headquartered in New York, to promote the drug, which was extremely successful. The population welcomed it as a cheap, harmless, and effective energy booster. Workers could work longer hours and were more productive. It was cheap and relieved depression, and it was not even considered a drug and appeared to have only beneficial effects. Many people mixed it with food and drinks. Dr. Otto Ranke, director of the Institute for General and Defense Physiology at Berlin's Academy of Military Medicine, began doing experiments with Pervitin using 90 college student volunteers, especially athletes and those in military training. He came to the conclusion that Pervitin could keep soldiers awake for days at a time, not need food as often, and march many more miles without needing rest. He called it a performance-enhancing compound. Hitler took a great interest and had it issued for the September 1939 invasion of Poland. The drug was provided in their daily rations and taken once or twice per day, and soldiers believed that it gave them supernatural capabilities. This was because soldiers could march for 3 days or more, and sometimes cover up to 20 miles or more per day, carrying a full combat load of more than 50 pounds for the infantry. With pilots taking it, they were also able to fly from sun up to sundown, and Poland fell in 28 days. In his planning of the invasion of Western Europe, Hitler issued a stimulant decree in April 1940 and sent more than 35 million tablets of Pervitin and Isofan, which was a highly modified version produced by the Knoll Pharmaceutical Company, and saw 35 million doses of Pervitin to be distributed to the military, with the infantry and armored soldiers given priority as they would be the spearhead. The Luftwaffe was also on the list, as he wanted pilots and crews able to fly longer and more frequent ground support missions. Their primary recipients among pilots were the Stuka dive bomber pilots, as stated by Kurt Kuhlny. Yes, we were issued the Pervitin, but it was not mandatory that we take it, but it was suggested. I took the drug, which worked faster and longer than drinking strong coffee. We had this throughout the war. We could fly more missions without being very tired. This became very important later in the war, especially in North Africa and in Russia, but we often needed a few days to recover from that. I just stopped taking it in Libya. The British Expeditionary Force Belgian and French troops, who were depending upon the Maginot Line to prevent an invasion, were stunned at the speed and continuous attacks night and day, which saw German forces take more terrain in a few weeks than they had taken during the entire duration of the First World War. This was because German troops were able to function for up to 72 hours without sleep or food, advancing at a pace that allowed them to outflank and overwhelm the Allied force. The Germans managed to trap the entire British army on the beaches of Dunkirk in what was considered one of the greatest feats in military history. The concept of blitzkrieg, or lightning war, especially the use of close air support rolling artillery barges tanks, attacking ground targets, with infantry support and fighters dominating the airspace over the battlefield, saw France fall in 6 weeks. The reports came in from field commanders, and the results were very impressive. Even men wounded on Pervitin seemed not to be very affected, and they continued on fighting due to the cocaine and methamphetamine combination. Because many German aircraft were shot down, some crash landing intact, and inspections were done. The British uncovered the Pervitin tablets, which were sent for analysis. The British then realized what the Germans had been using, and they began developing their own version called benzedrine. With its added methyl group molecule, Pervitin races across the blood-brain barrier a bit faster than benzedrine. Otherwise, the two drugs have virtually the same impact. Hitler again ordered more supplies for the invasion of Yugoslavia and Greece. During the airborne invasion of Crete, German paratroopers and mountain troops carried Pervitin in their kits. In fact, its consumption actually increased when Hitler doubled the availability during Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union, which was launched on June 22, 1941. The world was shocked at the speed of the German attack and the amount of terrain taken, but that steamroller ground to a halt by December 1941. But this was back when the side effects and risks of addiction were really being seen. Soldiers were dying because of heart failure or committing suicide due to the psychosis influence, which prompted taking it off the civilian open market. Due to the very long summer days in North Africa, Luftwaffe, Italian, British, and Commonwealth pilots were given their respective drugs in 1941 through 1942. The new 8th Army Commander, Lieutenant General Bernard Montgomery, took the recommendation of Dr. Q.V. Wallace, issued benzedrine to his soldiers. For example, soldiers from the British 24th Armored Tank Brigade were prescribed 20 milligrams of benzedrine per day. That was twice the amount recommended to RAF pilots just prior to the Second Battle of El Alamein in Egypt. Following the British victory in El Alamein, American soldiers entered the ground combat in North Africa in November 1942, with Operation Torch, with the Allied landings in Algeria and Morocco being successful. American soldiers were issued amphetamines in the form of benzedrine when General Dwight D. Eisenhower ordered an initial 500,000 doses in order to battle combat fatigue following the Battle of Kasserine Pass. Allied commanders believed benzedrine, an amphetamine similar to Pervitin, was the answer, hoping the amphetamine would defeat not just the need for sleep, but anxiety and fear among troops and overcome shell shock, or what we today called post-traumatic stress disorder. For Allied soldiers, caffeine or Coca-Cola coffee were always the primary stimulants of choice, but now they had benzedrine. The German Navy was also using Pervitin as it was issued to U-boat crews but was not mandatory to be taken, and the drug was re-engineered and then tested using varying amounts and combinations of cocaine and methamphetamines. The human guinea pigs used were prisoners of the Sachsenhausen concentration camp who were given the drugs and forced to carry heavy sacks of rocks and walk around a track. Benzedrine and Pervitin continued to be used and were quite popular after World War II. By the 1950s, amphetamines were marketed as a diet pill and mood enhancer, with celebrities like Marilyn Monroe and Jack Kerouac using the stimulants and promoting them. It has been debated as to the moral and ethical practice of giving soldiers drugs that sometimes had terrible side effects, some being fatal. Was using the drugs worth it in the long run? Another German veteran from the war, Otto Carius, one of the most successful tank and tank destroyer commanders, had a very interesting insight, because after the war he became a chemist and pharmacist. Otto stated, "We had the pills which I thought were a good idea, especially during the big fights in 1943 in the East. But after a while, I could see that there was a very bad after effect, and I stopped taking them to stay awake. I realized that having my tank shot at was enough to keep anyone awake." Later, as I learned pharmacology, I realized just how dangerous Pervitin was, and I would never recommend it for general use. Pervitin may have fueled the lightning speed of the Blitzkrieg, but it came at devastating cost. Soldiers who once felt invincible were left broken physically, mentally, and emotionally. Addiction, psychosis, and death followed many who had marched for days without sleep, driven by a chemical promise of power. Even Hitler himself wasn't immune. As his empire crumbled, so did his body and mind, ravaged by years of drug dependency, paranoia, and delusion. The story of Nazi Germany's drug-fueled war machine forces us to confront an unsettling truth. When victory is the only goal, how far are we willing to go, and at what cost? So what do you think? Was the use of performance-enhancing drugs in World War II a necessary evil of warfare or an unforgivable violation of human ethics? We hope you enjoyed this video by Forgotten Mystery. Don't forget to like and share this video. Thank you for your love and comments. See you in the next amazing video.